Wonderful. So today, like again, I wanted today's topic in working um with the hidden opponent to really just focus on fueling fundamentals to, actually give you guys great tips. And I think most of you on this call are campus captains. Am I correct about that? Yes. So by giving you like these sports nutrition tips on how to fuel to perform, you can then also share this knowledge. And maybe some of this might sound basic, but if I'm being completely honest with you, 90% of the clients that come to me are just not doing the fundamentals. And so I think it's really important to always come back to the fundamentals because it works. It really, really works. And again, that's where like when we're trying to be too intricate or like try something trendy or well my friend's mother tried these supplements, that's where we get ourselves into trouble. And coming back to the fundamentals of how to fuel to perform will probably cover 80 to 90% of an athlete's fueling needs. And then that extra 10 to 20% might be oh yeah, you do have some sort of underlying medical condition going on, or okay, there is an injury where we need to add those kind of specialty like sprinkles of nutrition into there, right? So we're going to focus on I guess the fundamentals today to really give this practical advice to you. And I think we'll have plenty of time for some questions and stuff at the end. Okay, so this is just a little slide about me, but I kind of already gave my introduction. The owner of Rise Up Nutrition. I did get my master's in sports nutrition, specifically from Florida State, my bachelor's at UMass Amherst, which is where I competed in track and field. And I know you guys have a chapter. I don't know if somebody is on this call, but I know you have a UMass Amherst chapter. So that's super exciting. And yes, I do have the podcast. We release an episode every Thursday where it's either me talking or interviewing another expert, like a personal trainer, a physical therapist, sports psychologist, cardiologist. So like, that's where, again, even though sometimes it's female athlete nutrition, there's a lot of really great experts that come on, and I have male experts as well. So definitely want to tune into those episodes. And I interview other athletes and I interview clients as well. So you can check that out in your own time. But we'll move on to today. We're going to just talk about fueling fundamentals for athletes, nutrient timing, and performance plates. So I first want to start off by saying like the problem with diets, and I'm a dietitian, right? It's like people come to me expecting, hey, where's my diet? Well, the problem with diets is they are often very restrictive in nature. Of saying, if I tell you, hey, eat X, Y, Z, then you feel restricted that you can't eat A, B, and C, right? They also often focus on what to remove or eliminate instead of what to include. They're very often not individualized to your needs. I mean, so many people saying, I want to do intermittent fasting, or I want to try paleo. It's like, these are these big generalized things that are certainly not individualized. And as an athlete, we're going to run into huge problems there. And then I think also this is where we can struggle mentally by feeling confined to the rules of this, or feeling like you don't have freedom. But I also want to extend this because I think in today's culture, many athletes actually are wise enough to know that they shouldn't go on a diet like, oh, I'm not going to do like South Beach diet or something like that. Like, you're smarter than that. And I'm proud of you for that. However, our culture is tricky because I would challenge you that saying, well, I just eat clean, or I just want to eat right, or I just want to have a great, diet for sports nutrition. I think those terms are applying, like they're literally saying the exact same thing. I have so many people come to me saying, well, I eat pretty clean, and I'm like, that's just another version of a diet of what you think is healthy based on our culture and what they've told you. So, and we're not going to dive too far into it, but I just want to start and preface with the fact that like, that's why I want to share with you the fueling fundamentals. It's not about following a diet plan or a meal plan. And I'm not saying that's wrong. There sometimes is a time and place for that. But if you are going to use that, it's not long-term, it's not a lifestyle, it could just be like a learning process. But I really want us to remember that nutrition shouldn't be restrictive. You have permission to eat food and eat all foods. Nutrition shouldn't necessarily focus on what to eliminate, but rather what to include. And I even mean this for people who might have sensitivities. Somebody with a peanut allergy obviously has to avoid peanuts, but instead of just thinking all the time, oh, I can't eat that, what to remove, instead we want to think about what are all the options you have available to you? What can you include on your plate to nourish your body? We always want to make sure that nutrition is individualized, and we want to make sure that it's supportive of your mental health as well, because as you all know, the physical and mental connection is very strong, and how you nourish your body is also nourishing your brain, and how you think about food certainly affects our physical performance as well. It can be my little cough breaks.
You're
Okay.
good. Take all the time you need. You're good.
Thank you. Okay, so many of us understand basic nutrition. I'm not going to go into pasta as a carbohydrate per se today, but I do just want to remind you all that there are 6 nutrients that you need to function. So those nutrients are carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, and water. You do not survive without them. And if one of these things is lacking or insufficient, then we're going to have an issue somewhere. And so just kind of going over to, this is really oversimplifying, but that's super helpful. Carbohydrates' main role is to energize your body, your muscles mostly, which is huge as athletes, and also your brain. And so this is where, again, things like, oh, I'm not recovering well, I don't have enough energy at practice or to get through a whole 90-minute soccer game, whatever it might be, it's most likely stemming from carbohydrates. We can look at that first and foremost. That's carbohydrates' role in your body is to energize. So the more energy that you need, the more carbohydrates you need. Again, this is where, athletes, it's just so important to remember that your fueling needs, your calorie needs, but also your carbohydrate needs are really, truly significantly higher than a non-athletic counterpart. Okay. Now, protein's main role is actually to build. So you don't necessarily want to use protein for energy. You're not supposed to burn it off at practice. You're supposed to use it to build things. So it's really the protein you put in your body is to build things internally. Now, our brains always go to building muscle. Absolutely. It builds muscle, which can also just mean repairing muscle, when muscle damages and breaks, which it does every single day in practice and in a game or competition. So you need that protein to rebuild. And then if you're trying to build extra muscle, then you would need even more protein to build upon that. But it's not just our muscle, it builds everything. So it's building your bones, it's building your skin, your hair, your nails, it's building your antibodies. So helping with your immune system, it is building your hormones, everything that needs building, that's coming from protein. And again, this is why I want to stress the importance of eating enough carbohydrates, because very often, if you're not eating enough carbohydrates and your body has a high energy demand and you're not giving your body enough carbs for that, then your body will start pulling from other sources, including, well, oh my gosh, I just don't have enough carbs for energy and I really need energy to get through practice right now. So it's going to start using protein as energy. And then guess what? Protein's not doing its job to build. And that's where we start saying, my hair's falling out. I'm super sore. I'm not building muscle, right? So you want to make sure that you're eating enough carbs to energize so that protein can do its job to build. Fat's main role is in protecting your body. And I always like to remind us to go way back to like 8th grade science class when we learned about how every cell in your body has a phospholipid bilayer. Remember that? And that's like what protects things from going in and out of the cell. So phospholipid is a phosphate and a lipid is a fat group. So fats literally protect every single cell in your body and protect things going in, going out. It's protecting your nerve signaling. It's protecting your brain. Your brain is comprised of so many fats. And that's why you'll often hear people say that fats are good for brain health and things like that. Fat is a food. I want to be super, super clear on that. However, I also like to think of, the fact that we store fat in fat tissue, which is a different thing, that we all need to have fat on our body. And we can store fat in fat tissue. And that also helps protect us because we need protection when we're in a lacrosse game and getting elbowed and sticked, right? Like we need some cushion there. We need protection. Your core body temperature is supposed to be, 98.6 degrees. And if it's 40 degrees outside, how are you protected from that? That's your insulation from our fat tissue, which is very often many fat cells and fats that get stored there. So this is such a good thing to protect your body. And we need those fats, protecting our nerves, protecting our hormones, protecting our brain, and literally in a physical sense, protecting our internal organs and structures from the outside world. So that's fat's role. And then vitamins and minerals, I said, grow and function, and there's a little overlap between there too. But ultimately, carbs, proteins, and fats provide us calories. That's what we call our macronutrients and our energy. And you need vitamins and minerals to help you break it down, digest it, use it, transport it so that you can actually put these macronutrients to use to help you grow and function. So for example, thiamine, one of our B vitamins, it actually helps you metabolize carbohydrates, right? So you need to have enough vitamins and minerals to help utilize those macronutrients. And then water, we need to help transport everything throughout our body, right? To move things along and get things going where they need to go. So that's kind of our basic overview of, fuel and its function in your body. And as basic as that is, I just think it's important too for us to always, sometimes nutrition, people just break it down to like calories in and calories out. Oh gosh, no, there's so much more than that. It's nutrients, it's nourishment for your body. It's what are these nutrients and what is this energy? As important as energy is, but what is it doing for your body? And that's very important to remember. Now, another important thing to remember is, I think just like, again, how much food we need. I cannot get into specifics because nutrition's individualized, but let's just think about the needs of a normal person. I don't know what defines normal, but maybe just a non-athlete, non-super competitive athlete. Okay. So somebody who, wakes up, showers, goes to work, things like that. Okay. So they need nourishment as well, because that's life. Like your body it's living, breathing, working 24/7, right? So everybody needs fuel to live. Everybody deserves food to live. And with that, we need a couple thousand calories a day. And we typically divide that into a few meals a day. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, maybe a snack or two is like totally normal for even a non-athlete. So then we think about the fact that an athlete's needs truly are higher, because you need not just fuel to live and function, you need fuel to live and function. And now you need more to perform, to show up, to get, push through, to require something of your body, to rebuild those muscles, things like that. So you really, truly do need more fuel. And with that, it could mean bigger meals. It can also mean additional meals. So it could be that, hey, I have breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack, but I also have something post-workout. And I also really have like lunch number 2, basically, like this huge extra snack. And I also do night snack. And I very often with my clients, like get out of saying things like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because it's very normal to have 4 meals a day, 5 meals a day. And it's like, I sometimes struggle with the word snack, because I think our minds think snack like, oh, like a string cheese. And it's like, that might not be enough, right? Like maybe snack is second lunch or first dinner, and you have second dinner as well. And so I think branching outside of the confines of what we think, a normal way of eating is, and knowing, hey, I'm an athlete, so I need to snack often or eat often. And I can have dinner number 2 if that's the fuel that I need to be energized and recover properly. So with
You're
that
good.
being
Take
said,
a drink if you need to.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I got water, I got tea. It was funny when I was going over the proteins build your immune system. I'm like, what did I do wrong? I'll actually, if you guys don't mind me sharing personally, I will share a little bit. I'm actually, I don't know, 28 weeks pregnant, I think. And when you're when you're pregnant, it's takes a big toll on your body. So I think that's part of kind of what's happening to me and why I'm not recovering as fast, because all of my nutrition is going to somebody else, not to me right now. So that's a little bit of what's going on.
Congrats, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So as I was saying, with understanding that as an athlete, you need fuel to live and you need fuel to perform. Actually, before I dive into nutrient timing, here's a little like fun slogan I say all the time. You know that you're fueling enough as an athlete when you can crush a workout, a practice, a game, and then you still have enough energy left over to dance and sing in the shower, right? Because we've all been there where, okay, I got through practice, it was really tough, and like, I don't want to do anything else the rest of the day. I think we've all been there. And on some level, like there's going to be those occasional times as an athlete that's going to happen. But if it's happening every single day, then I would challenge you that you're not accomplishing both tasks of fueling to live and fueling to perform. You might be fueling to perform, and it's crazy that your body prioritizes that, but it does, because in the cell, like the cells of your body don't know that you've voluntarily, decided to play sports. And even if we're competitive, I'm still saying it's voluntary, right? Like it's not forced, like you chose to sign up for this sport and to participate, right? But the cells of your body don't know that. They think that when you're, running, if you're a track athlete and you're literally running, or basketball, sprinting down the court, like the cells of your body don't know that it's just a game. Like they're like, am I running from a bear right now? Like this is life or death. And so the cells of your body will put everything it has into giving energy to perform. But then if you didn't really have enough energy, that's where the rest of life kind of takes the back seat. And that's where it's like, oh my gosh, I need like extra naps. Like I can't stay focused in class. My hair is falling out. Like all those other things start to get compromised. And so it's interesting because so many athletes say like, well, I must be eating enough because I'm performing great. But I would challenge you to look at how are you performing in the rest of your life? And so I do want you to kind of think about that. And then again, maybe do that little test on yourself. Like, all right, can I go crush practice and then dance and sing in the shower and like have enough energy to live my life as well? That's your little unofficial, not scientifically validated marker. Someday I'll do a scientific study on that, but so eating enough is important. And then we think about that. It's honestly, it wouldn't be ideal to go all day, like not eating very much and then eating a ton at night. And I'm not discrediting that, like, it's okay if you do eat a lot at night, because very often that's when we have our time to eat. However, as much as possible, we really do want to space that out throughout the day, because that is what optimizes your recovery, your performance, your energy levels, your hormones. So it is very normal and regular for an athlete to eat every 2 to 4 hours. Again, the amount of time that you spend in like an energy deficient state, like if you are having a really small breakfast and not getting anything in post-workout, and lunch was, just a granola bar, you're in what we call an energy deficiency throughout the day. And that's also when you are most active and you have a high need for energy throughout the day. The more time you spend in an energy deficient state is actually inversely related to testosterone, metabolic rate, recovery, muscle mass, and then it's positively related to increased cortisol. So it's not just about, am I eating enough by the end of the day, but am I eating enough throughout the day? Okay, you want to have improved muscle mass, you want to have improved hormones, you want a great metabolism, you want to recover well. It actually does come with eating every few hours. Now, don't take this as a rule. If you eat something and an hour later, you're hungry again, totally, you can eat an hour later. This is just a kind of rough marker. I might say that if you eat and you're hungry an hour later, maybe you didn't eat quite enough the first time around, right? But it is normal to be hungry every few hours. I also would challenge you that if you are going 4 hours or more, that would be too long without food, because that's where we actually do see hormonal dips, metabolic rate dips, increased cortisol, which is your stress hormone. So try your very, very best to eat every few hours. With that being said, if you're eating every few hours, hopefully that includes pre and post workout as well. Again, I'm not a big fan of food rules, but when it comes to sports nutrition, I certainly have some guidelines or guardrails, and eating pre and post workout is one of them. That is just like, this is something we really should be doing most all of the time, because it directly affects your performance and your health. So pre and post workout could be, hey, I had, an applesauce or granola bar or banana, 30 minutes before practice. And then I grabbed a protein shake and a PB&J post practice. Sometimes our meals might work out to be pre and post practice. If you have lunch at 12 and practice is at 2, that could be appropriate. But if you have lunch at 12 and practice is at 4 and we're stretching that 4-hour mark, I would say, nope, we need to get that extra pre-snack in. Okay. And again, a lot of fasting workouts are trendy and popular right now in our culture and society. This is not optimal for performance. And I would argue not optimal for health either, even if you're not an athlete, but it's definitely not optimal for performance. So again, I'm not a big fan of food rules, but these are certainly sports nutrition guidelines to take very seriously and do your best to incorporate.
Lindsey, I got a question for you.
Sure.
So what would you suggest, and you might be getting into this, for like a morning workout? So obviously it can't really, eat 2 to 3 hours before or have like that snack. I mean, I guess that you could have a snack, but I'm used to just as soon as I wake up, I throw clothes on and I go work out right away. So what would you suggest for that?
Okay, so totally understand. And I never want people to really compromise sleep because that's just so important. But I will say that you can eat something. It might take some trial and error. What you want to focus on is carbohydrates because they are the most easily digesting and like honestly simple carbohydrates. And what I mean by simple is like sugary refined things like a piece of white toast with jam, a frozen waffle. That's one of my favorite morning, frozen waffle or two, an applesauce, a squeezy applesauce pouch, a simple bowl of Cheerios. It doesn't have to be this complete meal. It doesn't have to have proteins and fats in there, just carbohydrates. Now I would say for most people, like one piece of toast probably isn't enough, but if you're used to eating nothing, start there and see if then you can build your way up to 2 pieces eventually, And then I'll also say this is where having a nighttime before bed snack can help as well. It doesn't replace the importance of getting something in before a morning workout, but it can help top off your energy stores and make sure that your muscle glycogen, your stored muscle energy is full. So having a nighttime snack is often recommended. And then in the morning, allowing yourself that quick thing. And honestly, 15, 30 minutes, if it's simple carbohydrates, that's what it'll digest. Graham crackers is another fun one. And like sports nutrition products, like chews and gummies, getting some carbohydrates in is the key there. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you. I see Emery has a question. I don't know if we have like time for, I know I was like firing off a question at you, but if you have.
Yeah, let's go with Emery's question. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know if we were like doing questions right now. But I was just wondering if you're like a dual sport athlete and you're like doing 2 sports, what's the best like both? Because like I just came back from track practice, but I also have soccer practice in like an hour or like ish. So like what's the best meal to have in between then to both act as like a recovery meal, but also like a prep meal for the next training? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. So once again, I think anytime, and this applies to in your situation or like tournament weekends, I'm thinking like, soccer tournaments and stuff like that. That's just like back to back to back. Again, this is where we do focus mostly on carbohydrates. You're going to want some protein because you're going to be hungry. But I love fats and we're going to talk about fats, but those are the things that I would minimize just because fats are slow digesting. And so it might sit heavy in your stomach. So that's where it's like, okay, get my fats in at breakfast and at dinner time and at snack. But for in between practices going from one to another. I'm thinking some great examples, Emery, would be like, I honestly, like, I'm sorry, I'm a huge fan of PB&Js. They just like, they're golds, they just work, right? I think a simple like turkey sandwich would do good too. Pretzels would be wonderful. Whether it's homemade like energy bites with oats and honey and some nut butter, or some really good granola bars. When I say good, I don't mean like your chewy bars, which are good, but it's just not enough, right? I mean, like, do like a Cliff Bar with a banana and a Gatorade, right? And again, this is where sometimes calorically, and I don't want to get too into calories, but calorically, you might be like, wow, that seems like a meal. Yeah, well, you're doing 2 practices, right? So it really should be, but we do want to focus on those more simple digesting carbohydrates so that it digests quickly and easily on your stomach. Was that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, and also when I mentioned the Gatorade, I definitely liquid energy if that settles better for you. So it could even be like some blended yogurt fruit smoothies, whether pre-made even, that could be great. I'm saying pre-made, like I'm thinking of like, Odwalla or like juice blends, like things that are like in ready to drink things. Those could be good too. And I think Kiara has a question. Is it related to this? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Sorry, I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
So I know you were talking about pre and post workout meals. So I'm a cross country runner, and I always like to have like, I don't know if you're familiar with like the Kodiak brand. I like to have like their little protein oatmeals before practice, but I sometimes feel like that upsets my stomach. Would just having like plain oatmeal without the protein aspect be better pre-workout?
It really would be. So I think this is again where our society like overemphasizes protein. Trust me, protein's important, but yeah, you really just need the carbohydrates, and the protein is a bit slower digesting, and it's not being used in practice. You're using the carbohydrates in practice. So just do the regular oatmeal for sure.
Okay.
Same
Thank
thing
you.
with like, yeah, those protein waffles, protein pancakes. I'm like, or you could just eat a regular pancake and have some eggs on the side, or have a Greek yogurt on the side, right? Like, protein's important, but not to replace carbohydrates. Awesome.
Yeah, so for the sake of time, we'll probably save the rest of the questions until the very end. Thank you all for your questions. I really appreciate it, but just for like sake of time. Sorry.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, I'll definitely try and get through so we can definitely answer questions. So just regarding this whole nutrient timing thing, because I think Emery was getting at that too, of like, oh my gosh, I go back-to-back practices. These are just samples, right? And you've got to figure this out for your schedule. But let's say you have a morning practice, get in that pre-lift fuel, and then maybe post-practice, you have your recovery, which maybe turns out to be the same thing as breakfast for you. And then 2 hours later, you're grabbing an extra snack, an extra fuel. And then about, 3 hours later, you're having lunch. Another 3 hours after that, a snack. Another few hours after that, dinner, and then a night snack to top off those energy stores because you've got an early morning practice, as I was talking about with Andy. So this could be like very usual for an athlete. What if it's an afternoon practice? It could look like, okay, I have breakfast, a few hours later, morning snack, a couple hours later, lunch. And then let's say lunch was at 12:30 and practice is at 3. It's like, well, you could make it. However, for optimal performance, just a little pre-practice fuel, little pick-me-up would actually do you a lot of good, because you also got to think about like, how long is practice? When's my next meal after that? So if you eat lunch at 12:30, but you're not getting done with practice till 4:30, that's actually quite a long time. And it's the amount of time that you're expected to perform at your optimal level. So getting in that pre-practice fuel, post-practice, a recovery fuel of some sort, and then dinner a few hours later. That could be normal. And then if we've got 2 practices a day, again, this is where I'm like, we got to kind of throw terms out the window, and we're just eating, we're just fueling throughout the day. So you could do a pre-fuel, post-workout recovery, a morning fuel, a lunch. Maybe you have something during, you have another recovery potentially, even though I didn't add that, that would be normal. dinner and a night snack. So eating that many times throughout the day, just really want to normalize that. I have so many athletes that are like, why am I hungry every few hours? I'm like, because that's what's expected, because you're doing a lot throughout the day. So this is very, very normal. Okay. 1 minute. Okay, so I'd love to see a raise of hands. How many people have seen like images like this before about your performance plates? Yeah. So, okay, great raise of hands. Now, raise your hand again if you feel like you actually do it. A few less hands. Yeah, right. Okay. So I think that's where, going back to what I said in the beginning, I think it's the application of things that is more of a struggle for people. These performance plates, these images have been circulating, and I do think it's somewhat helpful, although I personally have some issues with them. Very often ones that we see say things like easy training day and hard training day. I'm not sure that, I mean, like an athlete has an easy training day, but like it's still not easy on your body, or like maybe you have an easy day because yesterday was an incredibly hard day, right? And tomorrow is going to be another hard day. So I really don't like using those terms. Instead, I'd like you to think about kind of what are you expecting out of your body. And I use the terms of a color plate, one that does focus on more color, meaning fruits and vegetables on the left side here. A peace plate, I call it that because it looks like a peace sign somewhat, and everything's balanced. And to me, that's peaceful. Okay. So that's your peace plate. And then you have your carb plate where the focus is carbohydrates. And I really love to encourage this peace plate most often because I think it works for most active people and athletes most days. And even if you do need more carbohydrates, you can supplement with extra carbs in all those snacks or pre, during, post practice. So I think the peace plate is one, like if you're like, yeah, I've seen these before, but you didn't raise your hand as far as actually applying it, I would challenge you to just focus on the peace plate. And this would be huge if you can really apply this for a majority of your meals. Now the carb plate is definitely going to be for game day, race day, high volume, high intensity training. So if you're in a sport that does like 2-a-days for Emery, who just said she's doing 2 sports, or like you do a preseason training camp, like during those, weeks of preseason, you're going to be needing carb plate more often. Recovery. And when I say recovery, this can mean a lot of things. This could be the day after a huge game, because again, that's where it's like, well, the day after, it's an easy day. We have the day off, but your body's recovering. So you might actually need the carb plate then. Also recovery from injury. So many of us are tempted, and I know I have injury here on the left side for the color plate. But so many of us are tempted during injury to think, oh, I'm not doing much, so I don't need much. Well, internally, your body's doing a lot. It's healing, it's rebuilding, it's repairing. So, and definitely any like issues, if it comes to red S, female athlete triad, male athlete triad, recovery here is going to require a carb plate as well. This color plate, I wrote in the off season or the injured or the non-athlete, but even with injured, again, this is going to be more for like a long-term injury, like ACL, where, it's a 9-month recovery process. But I want to challenge you, in the very beginning, when you just have surgery, you need your recovery plate. It's more when we're in the depths of, okay, I'm in month 2 or 3 of this, maybe we do the color plate. But for the rest of this, I really want to focus on our piece plate of this balance between protein, carbohydrates, and color. About a third of your plate protein, any protein, a third carb, and a third color, fruits and or vegetables. Fats are not on here because that would be kind of crazy to have a third of your plate be olive oil. I don't know how many of us would like that. But you absolutely do need fats in your meal. It's just usually you incorporate it into these things. I would challenge you to certainly identify at least 1, maybe even 2 or 3 fats. So maybe you put butter on your rice and you roasted your broccoli in some olive oil, and maybe you sprinkled some cheese on your chicken, or you've got 3 sources of fat in there, and that's perfect. Okay. So fats do need to be on your plate. So focusing on this peace sign plate, I wanted to give you more real life examples, I think, because this is where I think the application is huge. So if we're going to do oatmeal, and this isn't necessarily, I do want to caveat here for pre-workout where I'm saying just focus on carbs, as we were just talking about, and like those early morning sessions, just focus on carbs. You don't need to do the peace sign plate. This is for your other kind of main meals of the day. Okay. So if we're going to do oatmeal, that's our carbohydrate. We can do Greek yogurt for our protein and blueberries for our color. And we do have fats in there as well. Maybe you mixed in some peanut butter into your oatmeal, and maybe that's 2% Greek yogurt, get some fats in. Maybe lunch for your carbohydrates is a microwavable rice, and our protein is tuna fish, and our color was chopped celery and tomatoes. Super simple. If you're living obviously college life, dorm room life, like this is something so easy to do. You can literally see the peace sign here. Again, snacks, if they're pre and post workout, they might look different, but here's a peace sign snack of carbohydrate crackers, protein cheese, color grapes, and a peace sign dinner of carbohydrate potatoes, protein salmon, color green beans. So this, I mean, this is amazing balance. It's not always going to look like peace sign. You are allowed to eat a burrito, and it has your carbohydrate, protein, and color in there. But we just gotta use abstract way of thinking and visualizing, and kind of ask yourself, in my burrito, do I really have enough color? Did I get my fats in there or not? Now, again, as I was mentioning, if you do need more carbohydrates, this is where you can still focus on the peace sign plate and then just add, hey, pre-workout, I'm having granola bar, post-workout, chocolate milk, during workout, I'm adding Gatorade. To dinner, I'm going to add a side of a dinner roll. To my breakfast, I'm going to add some more fruit for a little more carbohydrate. And that's a great way that as an athlete, you can focus on the peace sign plate, but still get more carbohydrates if needed. Carb plate, another huge, like what we're going to do a lot as athletes, because especially in season, training a lot. So I think just looking at this visually too, like you can tell that there's still balance. Like you still have fruits and veggies in there. You still have protein. So all your components are there. But I also think again, if we kind of go back to the last slide, you do visually just see, right? We don't need MyFitnessPal. We don't need to track these things. You can just visually see, oh yeah, I've got more carbohydrates because I'm doing like it's waffles with syrup and fruit and the orange juice for breakfast. Okay, the lunch, yeah, I've got protein with the deli meat and I've got fats with avocado and mayo, but like it's that big sandwich, right? I've got more carbohydrates there. So I think that focus where 50%, sometimes more, it is okay to have a full plate of pasta. That's more than 50%, that's okay, but we still got our protein, we still got our color in there, still included, right? So you can see that the carbohydrate is most emphasized. And then just to give you some visuals of that color plate too, it's okay, I've still got everything. I've still got my protein with the eggs. I've still got my carbohydrate with the sweet potato, and I've got my color with the spinach and banana, but you can just kind of see the color pop a little bit more, right? And I think, unfortunately, I think a lot of athletes get trapped into eating this way, which is good. This is wonderful, but maybe actually you needed this to be just toast. And maybe the snack here, we needed a granola bar, and we did need those more carbohydrates to really fuel enough to get enough energy as an athlete. So this is ideal for, again, maybe those long stretches of off season that, okay, I'm taking like 8 weeks off or something like that. And even if you retire from sport, this could be a great way of eating as well. So I know this isn't super specific, but I actually do think the visuals are nice and just kind of comparing like side by side. And I think the peace sign plate really works great for most people. So I would really challenge you to try your best to make that peace sign plate work for most of your meals and snacks. Okay, so I did want to leave time for questions. But before I get to that, I guess I'll just say my thank you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to present to you all. And I know it was kind of some fundamentals, but I hope it reinforced some things, and we'll see what questions you have. And if you want to follow me or get more nutrition advice, my website is riseupnutritionrun.com. which is because I am a runner, but also because it's Rise Up Nutrition spells out run. So that's kind of cool. And that you can follow me at female.athlete.nutrition as well. So I'll stop sharing my screen and you can see what questions we have. And they can be questions about this topic or things I didn't address. I'm open to that.
I did see Maggie raise her hand like on camera first. So we'll go with Maggie. Thanks for joining, everybody. If you want to hop off now, you're more than welcome to. If you have questions, you can stay on. Or if you just want to listen to other people's questions, that works too. Maggie, go ahead.
So Lindsey, thank you for talking. That was really, it's very beneficial. I just followed your thing on Spotify and I might have tagged you on a thing on Instagram. But I had a question. So I was trying to get to that point. My freshman year, I played basketball and now I'm in grad school. And there was a lot of times where I found myself obviously not eating anything for practice. And then I became more tired. Now transitioning into, I am not an athlete anymore. You saying about ACL, I actually tore my ACL last year to end my senior year of college basketball. So it's just ironic that you said that. With that, I like to cook more. Do you like have any tips to keep myself motivated to keep cooking? Because I really enjoy it, but there's a lot of nights where I'm just like, I'm not going to eat tonight because I can't cook.
Oh my gosh. I love cooking, but it's impossible to cook 7 nights a week. I can't even do that. And this has worked for me for years. I'm not saying it'll work for everybody, but for me, I honestly try to just plan 3 to 4 dinners a week. I feel like that's realistic. I just feel like it's more realistic, and then make extras, have leftovers, enjoy takeout once a week, go out with your friends, and that way there you have like, okay, I like to cook and I've planned a few meals, and you have that confidence and enjoyment of making food, but you're not setting this unrealistic expectation. And again, for some people like meal prepping works, but I'm also a huge fan of like, if you're cooking for one, like just make the recipe that calls for 4 servings because you'll have it for lunch, you'll have it the next night. I do want to encourage having like, I know this is going to sound so like elementary school, but I want to encourage having like a hot meal as often as you can. There's actually a lot of research like behind like a cooked meal and boosting morale and mental health as well. And I actually know that from my days of working with the military. When they're eating all these MREs all the time, it's like morale goes down. You give them a hot meal, oh my God, morale goes up, right? And so as much as it is okay, Maggie, and I do want to say it is totally okay if you don't feel like cooking and dinner is a PB&J and a glass of milk, or dinner is, a smoothie, you can totally do that. But I want to also encourage, some people get into that rut too often of dinner always being a yogurt bowl, dinner always being cereal. And so I would challenge you to get those hot meals in a couple times a week, because I think it's also really important for our morale and mental health.
Oh yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah. And I mean, I do every plate. So that also really helps. It's a little expensive, but it's also like, I'll do it once a week or, whatever. But that really helps as well. Thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to use, there's so many different like food programs now. Why am I blanking? Blue Apron type things, like stuff like that might just help and be motivating as well.
I mean, I only started using it because Victoria Brown told me to, the $20 thing, and I've been using it since. So just big influencer, if you couldn't tell. But thank you again. That answered it really well.
Awesome. Thanks, Maggie. All right. So we'll go Emma, Juliana, and then Emma Schmidt. So we'll kind of go there. Go ahead.
So I know that a problem that I've run into a lot, especially being in college, is just like the money factor, just because like a lot of the time, like a lot of healthy foods are like super expensive, or like more expensive for like somebody who is like not actively working all the time, especially being an athlete. I know peanut butter is a huge one, but I was just wondering like other foods that are like cheaper on the end, but still like fuel us enough to like.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. It's so funny because my usual answer to this was like, eggs are cheap, and like not anymore. So Oh my gosh, hold on. Okay, can't make myself laugh, apparently. So I do think it's a big misconception that eating healthy has to be expensive, although I agree that there are foods marketed as healthy that are expensive. However, there are some very healthy, cheap foods. For example, did you know that egg noodles, which is like the cheapest pasta out there, have incredibly high amounts of iron in it? A lot of our actually like our beans, right? Canned beans are cheap enough. Never mind if you want to go the extra step to get like the dry beans. So cheap and incredibly full of nutrients, tons of B vitamins, carbohydrates, and proteins. When it comes to our protein as well, protein does tend to be expensive, but like you don't have to at this point in your life, you don't have to buy the organic or the free range. I understand that that might be of value and importance to people, but from a nutrition standpoint, at this point in time, it's not going to make a huge difference. So if it's not in your budget, don't stress about it at all, like literally at all. It's not going to greatly impact your health. There's like very, 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 very little research on that. So you don't need to worry about the organic and kind of all natural terms like that. Also, this might be kind of cheesy, but sign up for rewards programs at your local grocery store. That it really does help. Like it really does. And there's also some apps you can look into that do like rebates. So it's not necessarily a coupon, but it's like you upload your receipt and you might get some rebates after. So those might be worth exploring. I know a popular one is Ibotta, but there's plenty of others. But I think this actually comes down to probably just knowledge and education that foods that are very often deemed unhealthy, like I was saying, like enriched pasta or something like that, actually does have, it's got your carbohydrates, it's got your energy, and it's got tons of fortified nutrients in there. So you might actually be surprised that these foods actually are healthy for you. And I think I do have a list. Maybe I'll send it over to Andy afterwards. Like I have a list of like kind of cheaper, like a college budget grocery shopping list, and I'd be happy to send it over.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can, if you want, like I'll share whatever you want to on socials after this as well. And then if you have any resources that you want me to like send to the CC specifically, like just get me what you have and I'll get it out. Awesome. Juliana, if you want to go.
Hi, all right. So mine's kind of a similar question, but I'm a freshman and I'm also just like, I recently tore my ACL. So like the color plate part at my school on a meal plan is just very non-existent. We barely have any fruits. So like how would you like suggest like going about this? I'm just wondering.
Okay. So I'm going to preface this again by saying like, I've said this like 10 times already, but like, this is not a rule by any means, but I do just want to share USDA guidelines. And I have issues with that, but anyways, USDA guidelines recommend having 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. And they recommend that a serving is actually just half of a cup. So that's a total of 2.5 cups of fruits and vegetables a day, which is like 1.5 cups of fruit and 1 cup of vegetables, right? So the reason I'm saying this is in a weird way to actually downplay the importance. Fruits and veggies are so important, but I think sometimes we overstress, like, oh, I need so many. You don't need like you need a lot of fuel, but like if all you can do is grab a banana with lunch and you had some broccoli at dinner and maybe you were able to throw some frozen blueberries in your cereal bowl for night snack, like that actually does check the box. And I do understand that, with a recent injury, we might care more about getting some anti-inflammatory ingredients in, getting more of those antioxidants in, but I kind of in a weird way kind of want to downplay, try every day to say, did I eat some fruits and vegetables today? But it doesn't mean that your whole plate really has to be super full of them. What I would say too with the dining hall is if it's mostly just the carbohydrates and proteins that you're getting, try to have your snacks be where you're getting those fruits and veggies in. So it can be, celery and peanut butter, carrots and ranch dip, banana with snack, things like that, that you can incorporate in your dorm room if they're not in the dining hall.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mhm.
I
I don't
think.
know if you want to pick the next person, Andy,
Oh, sorry.
or is it Emma?
Okay. Sorry. Hi. I'm trying to like figure out how to like word this like correctly. So like I'm a person who like recently like was like diagnosed with my like eating disorder and like disordered eating and all that stuff. So it's been really interesting to like come to talks like this and like see all these really cool like realizations of like, ooh, like I can see that in myself, and then also see it on like kind of like my team's culture with eating, which is something we've really gone through this year. So I'm wondering if you have any tips, like what's the best way to promote this like healthy culture of eating to like your teammates without making it seem like you're like throwing it in their face. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's such a good question, and it's a difficult topic because I think as you become aware of disordered eating, whether it be because of yourself and your own journey, but suddenly you start seeing it everywhere because unfortunately, I think there's like our American society, it's like it's been building up over the last, I don't know, 40 years. And this is different in other cultures. We don't see the same relationship and food habits and things like that. But you're probably, Emma, you're starting to see it everywhere now as you're making these realizations yourself. And so they are delicate conversations to have. So my tips are, first and foremost, to do your best to lead by example. That's one of the strongest things that we can do, especially if you are eating with your teammates in the dining hall, is to really lead by example and creating a peace plate, having all food groups. And then if you get into, my second tip is if you get into a conversation about food, I know this is difficult, but try and come up with one or two statements that you feel confident in. I'll give you a few examples. Like, all foods can be healthy. All foods can fit into a healthy diet, or nutrition's really individualized. So even if that doesn't work, or that works for you, but it might not work for me, right? And some like blanket statements like that can kind of end what might be a toxic conversation when somebody's saying, oh, you shouldn't have dairy, that's inflammatory. You can say, well, nutrition's really individualized. Dairy might not work for you, but it really works for me. And that helps shut down that conversation, will help with your teammates also feeling more relaxed of like, oh, okay, I don't have to believe that one person who said dairy was unhealthy, right? Like it kind of, because everybody's thinking that. If you're thinking it, everybody else is questioning it too. So I think coming up with 1 to 2 statements, and again, I kind of said my favorite, nutrition's individualized, all food can be healthy. Yeah, I think those are a little bit more non-confrontational. And I'm not saying you shouldn't confront it, but when we start to say like, no, you're wrong, then people get really upset about this.
Yeah.
If you start challenging them because, they followed an influencer who said dairy was bad, right? And so it's, I think kind of those blanket statements that you feel comfortable and confident saying in as a group setting will help settle down everybody's minds and what insecurities they might have. And my third piece of advice is continuing to educate with resources. So, whether that be things like my podcast and my social media page, or other dietitians and sports nutritionists that are spreading this message that all foods can fit, and the importance of a sports nutrition diet, and, disassociating food from your identity or food from your body shape and appearance, continuing that. And, I think many of you, again, here are campus captains. And so maybe initiating it, maybe pre-season doing a nutrition talk and then cooking a meal together, could be a great thing to do. A meal that cook a pasta dinner together and normalize that. These are some behaviors that could be helpful in a team environment.
Yeah, something that I want to emphasize too, when you're having those conversations, first of all, it's not easy, right? Second, it's going to take some practice. So if you have like a friend on your team or on campus, or even like a roommate that you feel comfortable with, just like bring it up to them. Hey, these conversations are happening at practice or after practice. And I really need some help practicing this conversation. That can help you feel comfortable down the road for when it does happen, like in the moment. And like I said, it's not easy. Practice this with people who you trust and that that you're close with.
Thank you so much. Like, I love both of those answers like so well, and like it really helps, and like I don't know, it makes me feel good. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Andy, that was a great tip of practicing it and with a trusted person. And I think there's one other thing I want to share. This is it's silly, but I call it the rule of the SWs. So it's some will, some won't, so what, someone's waiting. And you can apply this to every area of your life. But in regards to this conversation, it means that when it comes to confronting somebody or your team about nutrition, like some will get it. And some will be like so grateful for, you saying that or offering your help or advice. Like some will get it. And some people just won't get it. They might not be ready to receive this information. They might get defensive. But in those situations where people get defensive or are not ready to receive it, we say, so what? Because somebody else is waiting. Somebody else who's been struggling with their relationship with food, somebody else who is eager for that information is waiting for you to have this conversation. So I think remember that as well as you go through this, that some people get it, some don't, but so what? Because somebody's waiting and they're waiting for you to open up this conversation and be authentic about what fueling well looks like.
Yeah, and if you're thinking about it, odds are somebody else is also thinking the same thing. So, and it might not even be a teammate that you talk to all the time. I can only speak from like personal experience. For a football team, you have over 100 guys in the locker room, so you don't know every single person on that personal level. If you have a smaller team, then you have that benefit. But somebody who might not be your best friend is probably thinking the same thing too. I hope that helps. Does anybody else have any other questions? Awesome. Well, Emery, go ahead.
Sorry, it's just a really quick question. I don't even know if it's necessary, but I was just curious, like, obviously you know this, but like what exactly does like carb loading the night before, like what is the impact of carb loading? Because there's especially in soccer, there's like always an emphasis on having like a pasta dinner before a game. So like what are the benefits of like having like pasta the night before a game, even if your game's like late in the day?
Yeah, so I first want to say the importance of eating enough carbs every single day. I think that's first and foremost. But when it comes down to it, we store carbohydrates in our muscles and it's called muscle glycogen. But we obviously don't have an unlimited supply of muscle and therefore you can only store so much carbohydrate in your muscle. This is an average the average body, which what the heck is that? Oh my gosh, I don't know. But the average body in scientific research says you can store about 400 grams of carbohydrate in your muscles. Well, you actually can push that with what we call carb loading. And you can actually push that to sometimes upwards of 500 or 600 grams of carbohydrate. And what that means is that then the next day when you're in your game or in your practice, you literally have more fuel. You don't run out of fuel as quickly. The reality is that carbohydrate loading does take more than one day to do. So I think like having pasta dinner the night before a game or a practice is probably not necessarily carb loading, but it's just ensuring that you have good carbohydrate in your muscle glycogen, but you might not be super saturating, which is what the term carb loading is really for. It's that super saturation of it. And that also, I'm going to say it really comes into play for our like endurance, ultra endurance, and like it might come into play for like tournament weekends where you've got like 4 or 5 games in a row or something like that. But for most of our high school and college athletes, you might not need a carb load per se, but you just want to make sure that you are getting carbs in and making sure that you have adequate muscle glycogen. It does directly help your performance. It doesn't have to be a pasta meal, but we love pasta. But like rice is carbohydrates, potatoes are carbohydrates, chocolate chip cookies are carbohydrates. So you've certainly got more options. I just think, yeah, it's definitely been a cultural fun thing to do, to have like a pasta dinner, and it is an easy way to get your carbs in and a yummy way to do that. So there's other ways to do it. But I think it's just ensuring that your muscle glycogen is good to go.